Welcome, everyone, to The Explainer. Today, we're embarking on a seriously fascinating journey. We're going to start at the absolute foundation of all biology, the literal microscopic rules of life, and trace how understanding those exact rules can launch you into some incredibly cutting-edge, real-world biomedical careers. So whether you're a student, a hardcore science enthusiast, or maybe you're just curious about how the basic building blocks of life translate into massive global industries, well, you are definitely in the right place. Okay, let's dive into this. Just take a second to marvel at this image. What we're looking at here is a fluorescent microscopy image of cells, and they're displaying this glowing, incredibly intricate structure. Kind of looks like a distant galaxy, doesn't it? But this isn't outer space, it's inner space. This visual perfectly captures the sheer wonder of cytology, which is just the study of cells. And honestly, before we even start tackling the scientific theory, we really just need to appreciate the mind-blowing complexity and beauty of the microscopic world that's happening inside of us literally every single second. So here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll look at the unit of life, then move on to the 4 macromolecules. After that, we'll explore origins in the microsphere, followed by studying the cellular machinery. Then we'll wrap up with the university journey, and finally, careers in life sciences. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the unit of life. To really understand the blueprint of life, we've got to start with the 4 totally non-negotiable rules of cell theory. And these rules govern every single organism on Earth, from a tiny microscopic bacterium all the way up to a massive blue whale. First up, the cell is the absolute smallest functional unit of life, period. Second, all organisms are built from these cells. Third, and this one is super crucial, every single cell comes from an already existing cell. So through cell division, a mother cell basically splits into 2 identical daughter cells in a process called mitosis, or it forms 4 germ cells in meiosis. Spontaneous generation of cells, that just doesn't happen. And the 4th rule, cell size is strictly limited by its surface to volume ratio. So even the most complex, giant organisms out there completely rely on these tiny microscopic units, rather than just being made up of a few massive ones. Let's actually break down that 4th rule just a little bit more, because it's a fascinating piece of biophysics. You might be wondering, why are we made of trillions of tiny cells instead of just, a few big ones? Well, it all comes down to this specific comparison, volume versus surface area. You see, the surface area of a cell determines its ability to exchange substances with its environment, so taking in nutrients and expelling waste. The volume, on the other hand, provides the actual reaction space for all the cell's internal processes. Now, when a cell grows, its volume increases way, way faster than its surface area. If a cell gets too big, the surface area just can't keep up with the demands of that massive internal volume, and the pathways between the organelles inside become way too long. So staying microscopic is absolutely crucial for ensuring highly efficient substance exchange. Moving right along to Section 2, the 4 macromolecules. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how perfectly the division of labor is mapped out at the chemical level. Now that we've got a handle on the cell itself, let's look at the chemical bricks and mortar that literally construct our cellular city. These macromolecules are built from super basic elements. Think carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, and oxygen. Take proteins, for example. They're built from amino acids and serve as the structural building blocks, catalysts, and signal transmitters. Then you have carbohydrates, made of monosaccharides, which act as your primary energy carriers. Next up are lipids, or fats, which form the all-important biomembrane, store energy, and provide insulation. And finally, we have nucleic acids, your DNA and RNA. These are made of nucleotides and act as the ultimate information carriers. Oh, and here's a fun fact from our source material. While carbs, proteins, and nucleic acids are true polymers that link together through chemical reactions, lipids actually just aggregate or sort of cluster together. That brings us to Section 3, origins in the microsphere. So we know what cells are made of today, right? But how did these non-living chemical blocks first organize themselves into something resembling actual life? This brings us to a wildly fascinating evolutionary concept. Long before true cells ever existed, the early Earth had what scientists call microspheres or protobions. Basically, these were stable droplets, little aggregates of macromolecules that actually managed to physically separate themselves from their surrounding environment. Now, to be totally clear, they were not living beings, not at all. However, they did maintain a very specific chemical composition inside their boundaries. And if you look at them under microscopic magnification, they actually look incredibly cell-like. So it was these stable chemical droplets that ultimately paved the evolutionary way, providing the structural template for the highly complex living cells we study today. But how do we actually study these microscopic marvels? That's where integrated university programs step in. Welcome to Section 4, Studying the Cellular Machinery. Let's look at the module chart for the Biochemistry and Cell Biology, or BCCB major over at Constructor University, which was formerly known as Jacobs University. Notice the integrated cross-disciplinary structure here. Classically, chemistry and biology were taught in these completely separate silos. You didn't really mix them. But in modern research practice, they have deeply merged, and this program intentionally combines these fields right from the very start. It recognizes that to truly understand the cell, you absolutely need the biology to see the structures, and you need the chemistry to understand exactly how those macromolecules are operating. Let's move to and see how this builds in Section 5, the university journey. Let's see how all this theory actually plays out in a practical sense over a 3-year academic progression. Step 1 is general science. This is where students get a broad, really comprehensive overview of biochemistry, cell biology, and organic chemistry. And they're immediately applying that theory in lab units. Then, Step 2 plunges right into advanced topics. The lectures split into these in-depth, problem-oriented courses where you learn things like, say, how to track the specific pathway of a protein, all alongside advanced lab work in microbiology and molecular cell biology. And finally, Step 3 is specialization and research. This is the really exciting part where students are doing full-day bench work in actual research labs. They experience different specializations through guided rotations, and then they cap the whole thing off by drafting a bachelor's thesis that's structured exactly like a peer-reviewed scientific paper. And that leads us perfectly into Section 6, Careers in Life Sciences. We're pivoting to the macro level now to look at the real-world impact of all this. The absolute most crucial point here is that we are currently living in a post-genomic era, and the molecular life sciences are just booming, like off the charts. Graduates who actually understand the cellular machinery are incredibly attractive to both global industry and academia. And the career opportunities? They are vast. You can move into graduate studies, or dive into the rapidly expanding fields of biotechnology and the pharmaceutical industry, or even work on the absolute cutting edge of biomedicine. Plus, the skills you learn in the lab translate directly into fields like forensics laboratories, immunology, and molecular genetics. Basically, the ability to read, interpret, and manipulate the rules of life makes you an invaluable asset when it comes to solving some of humanity's biggest health challenges. We've gone from the absolute tiniest building blocks, the amino acids and nucleotides, all the way up to global career paths that are literally shaping our modern world right now. Understanding the cell is quite literally understanding the operating system of life itself. So I want to leave you with this final exciting thought. With potential career paths spanning across biomedicine, genetics, and pharma, which part of the cellular machinery will you decode? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep questioning the microscopic world around you.